Hi guys, for today's video, let's talk about antichresis. Of course, we will be defining what a contract of antichresis is, its characteristics, the rights of the antichretic creditor, and other pertinent concepts. So what is an antichresis? It is a contract wherein the creditor acquires the right to receive the fruits of a real property belonging to the debtor with the obligation of applying those fruits to the interest of principal obligation if any interest is due, or to the principal if there is no interest. Still not clear? Here's another illustration. Arnie loaned 500,000 pesos from Vince with 2% interest per annum to make a commercial gym for Adonis Bar aspirants. Arnie realized he could no longer pay the loan. Thus, he entered into a contract with Vince whereby the latter shall acquire the right to the fruits of the commercial gym with the obligation to apply the fruits to the interest first and to the principal thereafter. The contract of antichresis is also known as a mortgage or mortgagee in possession. Why is that so? Like a contract of mortgage, the real property is the subject of the security, and the contract is separate from the principal obligation, which may be and is usually a loan. Furthermore, the mortgagee has the possession of the mortgage property, which he will use to enforce his claim in his capacity as a mortgagee and no other capacity. He is not claiming the real property as an owner or as a lessee. He is simply a mortgagee that possesses the property as a mortgagee to enforce his claim. How? By applying the fruits of that real property to the interest if owing or thereafter to the principal obligation. Now let's go to the characteristics of a contract of antichresis. First, it is accessory because it cannot exist, and actually, it exists to secure the fulfillment of the principal obligation. Without such principal obligation, the antichresis cannot exist. Secondly, a contract of antichresis is also formal. That must follow the formalities required by law. Remember, in the discussion on contracts, the law will require a certain form, either validly greater efficacy or public convenience. Furthermore, in a contract of antichresis for validity, the form must be complied with. Under the law, both the principal and interest must be in writing for validity. Likewise, the nature of the obligations, specifically that the creditor will acquire the fruits and apply the same to the interest and the principal, which must be expressly stated in the contract for us to determine that the contract is indeed a contract of antichresis. Since the rule in contracts that the contract is determined not by what it is called or by its name, even for example the title is sale or whatever, we follow or determine what the contract is by following the terms and conditions stipulated therein. Again, to reiterate, antichresis is a formal contract and formalities must be complied with. These formalities state as well that the nature of the obligation must be expressly stated, and the principal and interest of the obligation must be likewise stated in the contract. Antichresis is also a consensual contract since it is perfected by mere consent. Nevertheless, property must be delivered because it is essential in a contract of antichresis that the creditor be in the possession of the property in order for him to apply the fruits to the interest if owing and thereafter to the principal. Likewise, an antichresis is also indivisible even if the principal obligation may be divisible. The antichresis itself, being a separate contract, is indivisible. Finally, antichresis may secure all kinds of obligations, whether pure, conditional, etc. Now, what is the subject matter? The antichresis covers only the fruits of the property. And how do we determine the value of these fruits? The law itself tells us that the fruits must be appraised at the actual market value at the time they are applied on top of the interest or to the principal. So what about the rights of the antichretic creditor? Number 1, he is entitled to the income and fruits of the property. Second, the creditor may also retain the property until the debt is paid. In other words, the antichretic creditor cannot demand the return of the property until he fully complies with the obligation. Finally, since this antichretic is a contract that secures the fulfillment of the principal obligation, the antichretic creditor has the right to petition the court for the sale of the property in case of non-payment or failure to satisfy the principal obligation. The parties may also agree that the rules on extrajudicial foreclosure will govern in which case there must be a stipulation that the power to judicially foreclose the antichresis is written within the contract itself. Of course, there are rights. If there are rights, the anticredit creditor also has obligations as well. Firstly, he is obliged to pay taxes and charges upon the property, as well as the necessary expenses for the preservation or repair of the property. Now, he has the right to deduct all those expenses and taxes from the fruits he receives from the thing. His obligation to pay taxes and expenses may be done away with the party, so provide through an express stipulation. Or on the same vein, the parties may also agree that the creditor will not be liable to pay taxes and expenses. However, if there is no stipulation, then that is the obligation of the creditor. Secondly, he should apply first the fruits to the interest if owing, and then to the principal. It follows the general rule in obligations and contract that payment must be applied to the interest first before the principal. And lastly, the obligation to render an account of fruits to the debtor for the sake of transparency and to provide any circumvention on the laws of usury, although the usury is suspended, but that is for the purpose of preventing fraud, etc. But what if the creditor does not want to pay those taxes and expenses? Does he have an alternative other than the stipulation mentioned? Of course. The creditor may compel the debtor to regain the enjoyment or repossess the property, in which the creditor will be relieved of paying taxes, charges, and necessary expenses. However, the creditor cannot do that, and that right will be denied if the parties expressly stipulate that such right will be denied to the creditor. If there's no stipulation, that right is available. Similar to the discussion on pledge of mortgage, pactum commissorium also exists here. So let's review what a pactum commissorium is. It is a stipulation providing for the automatic appropriation by the creditor of the property in case of non-payment of the obligation. That stipulation is prohibited. Therefore, such stipulation should not appear in a contract of antichresis. If it also appears there, then the only stipulation will be void. Only the stipulation will be void. The contract of antichresis is still valid. Finally, let's talk about this concept that the creditor and his successors cannot acquire ownership over the property through prescription in obligation. So, prescription is a mode of acquisition of ownership through the passage of time, or in other words, through the passage of time, rights may be acquired or lost. So here, an anticredit creditor cannot become an owner through the passage of time, through prescription. Why? Because the anticredit creditor does not possess the property in the concept of an owner. He is a mere anticredit creditor or mortgagee in possession. For acquisitive possession to apply and for the person to become the owner through acquisitive prescription, the holding of the land must be in the concept of an owner, which is not the case in anticredit creditor. This is it for now. Thank you for watching.